This meeting of the Oyster River School Board will come to order. It's March 20th, 2019. I know it's unusual to see me in the chair seat, so just let me do a quick explanation. We just recently had our elections, and right after our elections, we elect new officers in accordance with several policies that the board has in place. So I was going to read those policies, not just their titles. Policy BDB, board officers and board organization, and policy BBAB, duties of the chairperson. So as a very temporary chair, I'd open the table to nominations for chair. Denise?
I'd like to nominate Tom Newkirk as chair.
And is there a second? Brian? Are there any other nominations for chair? Seeing none, I will call a vote. All those in favor of Tom Newkirk as chair? The vote is unanimous.
I'll abstain.
The vote is almost unanimous. 6 with 1 abstention. Tom, you can have the chair back.
Thank you. Thank you all. Fantastic board to work with.
Truly.
So I'll open the nomination for vice chairperson. And since I can make a nomination, I'd like to nominate Denise Day. So is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. I'd just like to say that I've really enjoyed working with Denise. We were on the phone a lot, talking, and I've appreciated her wise counsel. And I also deeply admire just her involvement in so many after-school activities. I think she's so integrated herself and so aware of what's going on. And that's just been such a benefit to I think, the school board, and just her wisdom and good sense on so many issues. So it's really been a pleasure to work with you, Denise. Is there another nomination? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor.
I'll abstain.
6 in favor, and Denise is abstaining. And before we go any farther, I wonder if you will introduce the new student rep.
Yeah, so this is Yasmin.
Hi.
She's a junior this year, and so she'll be with you for 1 year until she graduates next year in the spring. Yeah.
Nice to be here.
Welcome.
Welcome. So happy to have you. Just feel free to, and like on every, I'm sure it's been explained to you, that on every vote we take, you have the right to vote, and your vote, and I will announce your vote. And I hope you also feel free to, anytime there's an issue, you have something you'd like to say. You know the school system, you're in it daily, and that's something we're not. And so you have perspectives and observations, and these are extremely valuable to us. And so feel free to enter in. You know, it's really important to hear your voice. And Patty has been a great rep, and she's, I think, often given us insight into the reality that students face, and we hope that you can do the same. So welcome. We're so happy to have you.
And Tom, and really too, if there's an issue that we're not talking about that you think we should be talking about, bring that to our attention. That's very important as well.
I definitely will.
Thanks.
And are you in the student council? Or?
Yeah, because I'm on, since I'm the rep for school board, I'm also on student council.
So that's a link too, that we might, you know, like sometimes if we might come into the council, I know we've done that, even back in the days when you met at 6:30. You know, it's good to hear kind of perspectives and the issues you have. So happy to have you here. The next thing we need is approve the agenda. I have a motion to approve the agenda. Denise?
I'll motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Moved by Denise. Is there a second? Second by Brian. Any changes? No? All those in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor, the student rep in favor. The agenda is approved. Public comment?
Hi, I'm Dean Rubine from Lee. Congratulations to the board members re-elected and now re-elected to their chairmanship.
Thank you.
Case.
Could I ask a question of Dean?
Yes.
Could you explain your shirt?
The RPM challenge is a challenge based in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, to make a record. RPM stands for Record Production Month. And every February, a bunch of musicians, really all over the world, try to make a record. I've done it for 11 years in a row. So
That's cool.
usually I look a little grizzled in February, and that's why. So congratulations also to the district for getting everything passed. And I was initially very shocked and worried when I heard the superintendent was planning to retire. But then I heard the 3-year transition plan, and I thought, that's too long.
Thank you, Dean.
Yeah, we'll keep that out of the record.
So we need a motion to approve the March 6th minutes, regular minutes. Got a motion? Brian?
Motion to approve the March 6th regular meeting minutes.
Moved by Brian, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Denise. Corrections? I had one. On page 1, it's Bruce Mallory, M-A-L-L-O-R-Y. And I had one other on page 3, after the
Here.
succession plan. Sorry,
Yeah.
could I have the sentence added? Thomas Newkirk recommended that the word internal be removed from the draft.
Is that page, I think that's page 3,
I
right?
think it's page 3, yeah.
Yeah, I see.
Okay,
So
just-
the succession
Oh, right here, it's down here. Yeah.
Yeah, just maybe right at the end of that.
what would you like me to say?
Okay.
Thomas Newkirk recommended that the word internal be removed from from the draft. Okay. Are there other changes? Hearing none, I have a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes with that change, please raise your hand. 7 in favor. The minutes are approved. Announcements, comments, and announcements, commendations, and comments from the district.
Good evening, David Goldsmith from Moheramet. I have a few announcements all about big events that are coming up very soon. The first one is that in 2 Saturdays, we're having our pancake breakfast, our annual pancake breakfast. It's Saturday, March 30th from 8 to noon. We're going to, of course, celebrate our syruping season, eat delicious pancakes with delicious syrup from Moheramet. It's also a really great time for our community to get together. We have a number of community organizations that will have booths set up along the path through our school as we get to the cafeteria. One of them will be the district to provide some information about the plans for the Oyster River Middle School. So one of the ways we're trying to communicate that to our community is to have these booths set up at different events. So the first booth will be set up at our pancake breakfast. We also have a group of teachers who have been working actually on a goal that they've had for social emotional learning connections to community, getting support for families outside of our school system, and they'll have a booth as well. So I know that's SEL is something that your board has talked about a lot, so I wanted to bring that to your attention. Also,
A little bit about that one, David,
what's that?
the SEL connection to the community. Can you just explain that a little bit?
Well, yeah, we have, you know, when we know that there are needs for students, there are very often needs for families as well. And those supports come outside of our school system very often from agencies that are in the community, and really working to bridge the gap between our school and those agencies and making sure we can have those connections so we can connect families to the services that they need to help support themselves and their children, of course, and then also just a way for us to really advocate more for those community services, know what they are. It's something that some of our teachers are working on, which I think is it's a great initiative. We also, continuing with our communication about the middle school, we're having a free spaghetti dinner presentation about the middle school, like that happened at Mastway. It's on Wednesday, April 10th. It will begin at 5:15 with a spaghetti dinner, followed by the presentation about the middle school, and then our PTO will have their meeting as well. So very similar to what happened at Mastway, we'll be doing that on April 10th for Moheramet. And then the biggest news impacting us is that the budget passed, which is wonderful. Thank you to everyone who voted. Regardless of how you voted, I think it's wonderful that so many people do vote. And then, of course, because it passed, our construction project begins. And so our construction project is beginning on April 1st.
Oh, wow.
We're having our fencing put up on Monday, April 1st, and light construction will begin around the face of the school right then, with the heavy equipment and the heavy construction beginning sometime mid-April. We're working with our students, and I've been in contact, of course, with fire and police about safety procedures as those fences come up, because the whole front entrance of the school will be blocked. We'll be using the west wing entrance between Mr. Lee and Miss Fitzhenry's room, which is the door right by the sundial. And that will be the entrance and exit for the whole school. And so we've been working on all of our transition plans to make sure that parents and students and teachers know exactly what's expected of how we go in and out through the building and sign in and sign out and do all of that. In addition, we're doing some work in April with Oyster River High School Advisory Group to remove a lot of the perennials that are in the ground still in our front area, store them, replant them in other places around the school, and then use them again when the landscaping is done. And we're having a ceremony this Saturday at 8 o'clock in the morning for the removal of the 2 sugar maples that are in the front of the entrance as well. We'll be doing that work. And then using those trees for some furniture for our new vestibule, as well as some other uses around the school to try to be as respectful and honorable to those iconic trees as possible.
Great.
Those are the big events happening at Moheramet. We're really excited about the construction. We're excited about the pancake breakfast. We're excited to support the middle school. It has a lot of food involved, which is always wonderful, so we're pretty excited. Thank you very much. Ms. Day?
Just in terms of the Maples, have the families been contacted? Because I believe one of them in particular I'm familiar with, who, the family is.
I've communicated to the Moheramet community about our plans for all of those things. I've also reached out to the families that have memorial trees in that
Yes.
area as well. Yes.
Yes,
And I've been
okay.
in contact with that family,
Oh.
and we have a plan for what we're going to do with that as well.
Okay, so that isn't one of the,
That's not one of the
Oh.
maples. I believe it's a pear tree, actually,
Really?
that's in the front of those where the sign is for that family. And I've been able to contact one of the family members there, and
Okay.
we had a very nice communication. It was a nice connection for me because that happened far before my
Right.
tenure at Moheramet, so I was able to contact her and talk that through.
okay, thank you.
You bet. Any other questions?
Great, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. Carrie Vaish from Mastway. Just real quickly, I wanted to give out 2 thank yous and share 2 upcoming events tomorrow. I'd just like to express the thanks for everyone who came out to the spaghetti supper dinner at Mastway to collaborate with our PTO, our child nutrition department, and to hear about the middle school project. We had a great turnout. I was really pleased with that. And I also would like to thank the National Honor Society students who volunteered to help with childcare. I think that made a big difference for families. I think we learned a lot about that and helping families come out and be a part of it. I'd also like to say congratulations and thank you to our PTO who hosted their first ever paint night at our school last Friday. Huge turnout. Our chairperson, Nikki Hodling, did a fabulous job. 72 kids came, being able to paint a canvas of their own. So it was something new and different outside of the box for us. That was a huge success. So thank you to Nikki and our PTO. Tomorrow we have 2 big events happening at our school. One, Jump Rope for Heart. Kathy Baker and Catherine Moore always team up to lead that event. Each classroom comes into the gym to jump for at least 30 minutes. As Kathy said, come dressed like a gym teacher tomorrow and be ready to jump. So if anybody wants to get their heart rate up a little bit, come on into Mastway. And secondly, Susan Leifert, our technology integrator, teamed up with Microsoft Education. They're coming in tomorrow to work with our 2nd and 3rd graders. It's pretty exciting for a day of technology. Our 2nd graders will be learning how to create 3D objects using 3D paint, and 3rd grade will be participating in a mixed reality demonstration. So things that they haven't been exposed to that they're going to bring in to show our kids. It's pretty exciting, and we're looking forward to seeing how they structure the day. So looking forward to it. Thanks.
Thanks.
Jay Richard, principal of the middle school. I just want to mention real quick, Oyster River Middle School lost a friend recently. Her name was Kathy Coakley. She worked for the UNH athletic department. I had mentioned it to Tom coming in briefly. Kathy would come over, bring a lot of free tickets to us to distribute to kids. We also planned the first UNH Education Day where we would go over to UNH and do some activities and also watch a UNH women's basketball game. But I encourage you to check out the article that was in Foster's this week. That's something that I learned about Kathy that I didn't even know, and I would, see her almost weekly when, again, her student athletes would come over and volunteer in our homework club. But she actually won 2 state championships for Oyster River High School way back in the day that I wasn't even aware of. And again, I had known Kathy for, at least several years, so just a cool nugget. But she was a very special person. All of us, every once in a while you're around somebody, you just know they're special, and she was. So she's going to be a big loss of someone that would visit our school. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Suzanne Philippone from the high school. Just like to bring to light some wonderful work our faculty has been doing lately. We've had a group of faculty working to prepare for bystander training with students, and I'd just like to name them. I appreciate all of their time and their effort. At times, the bystander program can lead to difficult but very important conversations. Ryan Long, Barb Milliken, Nick Rishardi, Trevor Garman, Kara Sullivan, Shauna Horsley. I'd like to note that Shauna has taken on a lot of the responsibilities of organizing as well. Katie Johnson, Brian Ryan, and Corey Blaze. So I'd like to publicly thank them for their work. I'd also like to thank the English department for bringing Shakespeare and Company back to the high school. We had the Taming of the Shrew performance earlier this week, which was wonderful. And I know that that it takes a lot of work to do that, and John Monahan is key in that organization, so I thank him as well. Mark Milliken, Heather McAnoff, Sean Peschel, and I will be traveling to the New England Secondary School Consortium Conference on School Redesign in Action, and we will be presenting the redesign of the master schedule and talking a little bit about our change process that we used and student and faculty voice in that process. So we're very excited to share that. We've had a lot of visitors come to the high school to learn about our master schedule, more specifically about the flexible time that we have in the middle of the day, how we organize that time, and how we utilize it to benefit students and faculty. Thank you.
Thank you. Others from the district? From the board? Denise?
I was able to attend the performance at the Johnson Theater featuring Will Todd, who is a British composer and jazz pianist, and the Oyster River High School Studio Orchestra, the Oyster River Middle School Jazz Band, and the Community Church of Durham all participated. I just want to thank David Irvin for just putting together just an absolutely amazing night. It was incredible to see so many kids so enthusiastic and, with a great performer. And it was packed. Johnson Theater did not have an empty seat in the entire place.
Okay. Al?
A couple on that note, I think it's this Saturday that the Oyster River High School Orchestra is having an event here to fundraise for the trip to China. So there's a silent auction, and I should know more about it, but I don't have the details, so somebody will hopefully pass it along. I was at an economic development meeting last week, and the middle school came up, and someone asked me a really interesting question, which is, in an era of declining enrollment, why are we building a new middle school? And I found myself, I left off the part about all the deficiencies of the school and found myself starting down the road of the long-range planning, which is only 10 years out. But I think it is an interesting question to answer, and if you guys could put together a concise presentation talking about why the middle school size is what it is, and how does that relate to our enrollment. And if I look at the long-range planning, it only goes 10 years out. I can't remember what the error was, about 10% at 10 years out. So when you come up with this model, you could probably or hopefully explain like plus or minus 20%. How does that factor into the middle school design? So again, concise and put it out there, because I think that's a question people want to know.
Did you answer the question?
I found myself droning down about how we'd stabilized about the enrollment, but I didn't really have, in terms of square footage, why it was appropriate, but I said, we will get back to you. So I think, again, that's a good thing to bring up. The other thing is on May 4th is UNH is having Day of Unity, and as you may have read many times in the newspaper over the last few years, and we've talked about it at this table, it was a real black eye on the university Cinco de Mayo, and so the university last year started and is trying to have a change in direction, change in perception about the students, and have them work on community service. I gave Sean Peschel the information today. Joan Glutting from the Dean's Office, who, by the way, is a UNH and a Oyster River alumni, as well as having a student here. It has a form that she's putting, looking for tasks for people to do. The middle school is already on there. The Nature Conservancy staff is leading a group to pull mustard greens out of the Stalwart Sanctuary. There's nothing for the high school yet, and there's nothing for the elementaries. I think, when you think of UNH, the thing I hear all the time is what people want from UNH, and there's very little time I've heard about people talking about how they're going to support UNH. And I think this is a really good opportunity for us to work together with UNH in a real sense of unity, for you guys to get a better sense of understanding of the Dean's Office, and to help get this off the ground. So again, I'll pass it along to anybody, but I would strongly advise you guys.
Could you tell them to model after our middle school service palooza? Because it's really, sounds like they stole Jay's idea.
They could have stole Jay's idea, but nonetheless, whether whose idea it is or not, it's a good idea. And I think that now more than ever, there is a need for unity in our community. And again, I think this is a really good way to do it. The town of Durham has a bunch of things that we're putting on the list. I just met with business people this morning that were trying to come up with ideas in the downtown Durham.
Who's the contact again?
It is Joan Glutting, and I'll email you the form, and you can
That'd be
disseminate
great.
it
Thank
to
you.
everybody out.
Thank you.
Just a comment about the enrollment, and I think one of the things that's always really hard is looking at the early enrollment, early grade enrollment, there we go, I'm trying to finally figure out what I'm trying to say, is that because of we add students every year because of our positive grade progression ratio, that the middle school is always, the numbers are always larger once that class gets to the middle school than it is when you look at kindergarten, first grade, second grade, because the way our district historically has been is that people move in and they just keep sort of adding to the class. And so by the time they get to middle school, that class is always, or has just about always been larger in fifth grade than if you look at, say, kindergarten, first grade, second grade. So
But
I think that's one aspect of it.
our projection only goes out 10 years. Hopefully,
Right.
middle school's going to last more than 10 years.
Right.
Really, what I think a good explanation is why are we, I can't remember, what is it, 110,000 square feet or something like,
Yeah.
why?
130.
Right.
132,
Why is
whatever
it that? yeah.
So if you can relate
Why
to
is
like
that?
exactly
It's a good
how you
question.
came up with the size of it, so.
That's a good question. I'd just like to have a shout out to Mike Anderson, who had a new book published by ASCD on talk in the classroom. He's been very productive in terms of publication, and a really good voice in terms of his writing and his speaking across the country. So congratulations to him. I also want to bring you up to date on the work we've done on the gun legislation, gun in school legislation, that after the last meeting we did, Dan and I did write a letter to the School Boards Association asking that they reconsider their opposition to 564 and take a neutral stand, because essentially the membership is probably divided, but for them to take a stand against 564, we thought was inappropriate. So I should hear from Barrett Christina. I think they're deciding today whether they're going to do anything about it, and I should hear from him, he said, tomorrow. The other thing that we did was we sent the letter out that we workshopped a couple, I don't know if it was the last meeting or the meeting before, sent it out to the major newspapers in the state, and to date it's appeared in the Manchester Union Leader, Concord Monitor, Keene Sentinel, Nashville Telegraph, and the Seacoast paper. So it's really the major papers that we, I hope that we get in, it has gotten in. So that was, I think, a successful getting the word out. So thanks to all of you for your comments on that. Other comments? Okay. District reports, Assistant Superintendent.
I will be brief, but I did want to mention one thing. We're in the final stages of planning the Summer Reach program. The catalog will be available the first week of April. We got a lot of great activities planned. To remind people what Reach is a summer enrichment program that we partner with the Durham Parks and Recreation on. The school district, this starts the week of July 8th and runs for 5 weeks. The school district runs programming Monday through Thursday mornings. It's a wide range of great activities, ranging from culinary type activities, science-based activities, creative activities, a lot of really great stuff. Then we offer a free lunch, which is provided to us through our school nutrition program, which is fantastic. And then the afternoons are programmed by Durham Parks and Rec. So a family has the ability, if they choose to have all-day programming for their child during the summer. Durham Parks and Rec also runs a full-day program field trip on Fridays, so if you're looking for a 5-day-a-week experience for your child, it will be available. Again, the program will be out the first week of April, and we're in the final stages of planning that, and it looks like a great program this year. And actually, one thing that's happening this year, kind of by accident, but it's working out well. We have both extended school year programs are also at the middle school due to the construction at Moheramet this year. So we have all of the kids in the district doing summer programming under the roof of the middle school, which means Doris is thrilled because a lot more kids are going to be accessing their free lunch program, and it's going to be great. So it'll be 200 to 300 kids a day doing programming at the middle school this year, which is another reason, Al, to why we need a new middle school, because we house more programming. So, thank you.
And just as we say each year, just want to remind people that even though it's Durham Parks and Rec, children, students from Lee and Madbury are involved in that program without additional cost. They're open, and so if any parents are watching, don't feel it's restricted to Durham families.
Thank you for saying that. And actually, that's anybody outside of our district can also participate in it. So it's not limited to just Oyster River families. So we actually have some families from Newmarket that also participate. So any family with school-age kids, grade 1 through 8, it's a great program. I encourage you to check it out. And we also we also have some scholarship opportunities. So if paying for it is an issue, feel free to reach out to me, and I will work with you to take care of that. Thanks.
Okay, great. Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Tom. So I just want to read into the record the vote on our election. So Richard Lawton, under Article 1, received 1,357 votes, and there were 7 write-ins. Article 2, which is a school board member election, Tom received 1,277 votes, and Kenny received 1,189 votes with 33 write-ins. In terms of the operating budget, we had 1,047 votes in favor and 504 votes against. In terms of our ARESPA agreement, we had 1,192 in favor and 368 against. So those are the numbers from the election, and like so many others said, I super appreciate the community support of the school system. It's really incredible that a school system like this continues to get such high support from our voters, and it just really makes you feel proud of the school system you're in. So thank you to the community.
Jim, what were the votes on the budget again that you read?
So the operating budget, the number of yes votes was 1,047.
1,047, okay.
Yeah, and the number of votes against were 504.
Okay.
And on the RESPER agreement, 1,192 yes and 368 no.
Okay. And so I think that shows the work we're going to really need to do to get the warrant approved, because we had a regular budget, and that's a roughly 2-to-1, 66%, 33%. And when we talk about that middle school project with the supermajority, and I think it just will show how much effort we're really going to need to put in to get that project approved.
Absolutely.
It's difficult to get that supermajority.
It's 60%.
60, yeah.
It's 60, right, so this was 66, so.
But 68.
68, good, so just.
Yep, we know that work is ahead of us for sure. And speaking of that work, since you brought it up, Ken, the administrative team yesterday started putting together a body of various communication outlets that we can use to inform the communities about the middle school. And then tomorrow at 2:30, Tom, myself, and Jay, and the architect, and several others will meet to flesh out that plan even further. So by the time we hit the first meeting in April, we should have something for you guys to review and make sure that we've hit all the big things. So one of the things I said yesterday to the administrators is nobody knows the people who get engaged in their various buildings better than they do. Nobody knows the events that are happening in their schools better than they do. But then when we get into the community side, we have a whole bunch of community events that go on over the course of the next 12 months that we can either put booths in or potentially do presentations. And so we're trying to identify those. And then as Al was talking about the enrollment question, it occurred to me that one of the things we should be putting up right away is frequently asked questions on the website, and have an open place where somebody can ask a question for us to be able to respond to. So that just becomes a running dialogue over the course of the next 12 months. So if somebody has a question about enrollment, somebody has a question about configuration or sustainability, it'll all be there. So I think that's another important piece. So as we start building this communication plan and we bring it back to you, we're not bringing it back to you necessarily as a fait accompli, but as a rich draft, if you will. So if you would take the time over the next couple weeks to think about events that happen in the towns that you think we could have a presence at, I think that would be incredibly helpful. Then I've been invited to Boston on the 28th to be part of a panel on innovative school design, and that's a result of being invited via our architect to a national organization in terms of school design and how to make it more student-centered as opposed to institutional. So I thought that was a really nice invitation, and I certainly accepted it. And then the last thing I wanted to share with you is in your packet, and I'm going to point out this yellow sheet too. This yellow sheet replaces a middle school sheet that's in this packet because we noticed an error. We went through all of these yesterday with the administrative team. Michael asked me to take a shot at the cost over the 5 years. So it's sort of like enrollment. In the immediate future, it seems very predictable, but the further you get out, it's harder to predict what the cost will be. So you'll see in this cost I put, when I finally get out to year 4, I just put everything in that spot, but we know that that has to be broken up between year 4 and 5. So this was an attempt to do that very thing. I think this helps in terms of the conversation related to the curriculum stipends. You can see that they are stipends. You can see that Todd and the administrative team have thought out who needs to be in the first cycle, who needs to be in the second cycle, who needs to be in the third cycle. You can follow the fiscal year down the page. So it's something for you guys to contemplate. And then when we get into the changes, what we did was we created a matrix for you, which basically gives you the original language, and the changed language is always going to be in blue. And so all of this is for basically you to review over the next two weeks. So when we have the first meeting in April, what we're hoping to do is have a first read on the strategic plan. If any of this needs to be adjusted, we can do it on the first meeting of April, or if there's any final adjustments that you want to make, we can do that in the first meeting of April as well. Hopefully, getting to the second meeting in April with a plan that we have consensus on, we can put a vote on and adopt. So this is homework, basically, for the next 2 weeks. So I'll answer any questions. Michael?
So this is really, really helpful. Thank you very much, both in terms of kind of getting a sense of what the budget impact is, as well as identifying specifically what the changes are. I assume that we still have the full version.
We do.
With these changes implemented in it.
Yep.
And I would actually like to take a look at that.
Oh, sure.
As part of my
I mean, I can send it out to the entire board, and, you're certainly welcome to the entire thing. I was trying to get to the crib notes piece.
Absolutely. No, I need this too, but.
So we'll have both. Like,
Yeah.
next meeting,
I'll
we'll have
send
the
out-
full plan plus the
Absolutely.
kind of synopsis of the changes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So these are your synopsis of the changes, and tomorrow or Friday, I don't know how far Wendy is in making sure all the changes are done, but she's been working on them, so as soon as those all are in the big plan, I'll send out the big plan. And I assume, Michael, I know that I tried to do this before in a different way, just drop the whole file, as opposed to trying to break it out in chapters. Because when I broke it out in chapters, the board seemed to want it as a whole file.
My preference would be to have it all in one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then that's what I'll do.
Yeah.
So if you guys can take the time to do this in the next couple of weeks, then it'll expedite the first meeting in April. And if you think of it as a policy, the way we do policy, it's first read, second read. So we can have a pretty open conversation on the first read and make whatever final changes we make, and so that when we hit the second read, it's a place where you're all comfortable and we can pass it, and we're ready to go on July 1st.
Okay, Denise?
I know that we're not having like a discussion on it, but just in terms of just the summary page that we got on the K-12 world language, I'm not seeing like any change, and I understand maybe those changes are reflected in the breakout parts, which Michael alluded to, but,
Right.
I was just kind of like saying, oh, this looks the same as it was, so, I don't know if,
Yeah,
again,
the
it might
language
be...
in the body of it is
changed, okay.
softer,
Okay, all right.
less definitive.
Okay, so I'll look forward to seeing
Okay.
all that then, thanks.
Yeah. Great, thank you very much, guys. So I think that covers my report, Tom.
Okay. Business Administrator?
Good evening. You have in your packet a budget update for this year's budget. Again, the standard report I give to you on a regular basis. Compared to last year, it's exactly the same place. So, no worries. I'll be spending the next couple of weeks going through the budget line by line, item by item, just trying to figure out some of those things that need to be adjusted and zeroing in on where we might be at the end of the year. Questions?
Just trying to dig in behind the numbers and trying to understand certain trends. Secretaries, we spent more. Did that have to do with the athletic department?
It did, yes,
So
correct.
that was where that came from. Bus drivers being lower, does that still reflect our lack of adequate staffing?
Somewhat, but bus drivers are a tough one to encumber and get right to the penny. So that one is based on an average weekly wage that we pay over the last year. So that can vary from driver to driver. So we just, because we don't have a salary for them, it's based on what they get for trips, we just encumber at an estimate. So, and it could be that too, because we are in fact still down 2 drivers, and we just lost another one, so we're now down 3 drivers. We did advertise, and I think we had 7 responses, so that's promising.
Okay. Professional substitutes, which I assume are substitute primarily teachers, way under budget, and I know that in the past we've talked about, I don't know if you call it an absentee rate, but maybe liberal use of sick time. Is this reflect that?
It's a combination of the Guild and administration working together, but it's also a bit of serendipity, would that be the right word?
I guess.
So predicting sub time is sort of like predicting the bus drivers. Some years you're going to have a lot of use because a flu runs through the system and a lot of people are out. More serious illnesses happen. Other years, it's easier. What we do when we're building the budget is we do a 5-year average, and then we look at that and we say, you know, I think we need to lean toward the higher end as opposed to the average because it's so doggone unpredictable. And there have been years that we've used it all plus, but quite honestly, the relationship with the teachers and over the last 5 years, we've reduced absenteeism by like 27%. So a lot of that had to do with their agreement with reducing the number of personal days from 6 to 4, but also a very collaborative effort by guild leadership to help their members understand that absenteeism hurts them and the students they serve. So it's been, right from the first year I was here, it's been an ongoing conversation and a very cooperative one. So I do think that plays into it, but it also happens to be what happens in a given year too, Ken.
As well. Okay, good. Thank you for those explanations.
Is it also true there that we only encumber subs that we know about, like long-term subs that we are?
The only thing that's encumbered is long-term subs,
right.
right? So that's the actual that happens on a biweekly basis is reflected in here, other than the long-term subs.
So that's
correct.
the least amount that we're going to spend on subs
Correct.
for the rest
Correct.
of the year in the encumbered column. It's going to go up.
Yes,
Yes. And it actually
correct.
does tend to go up towards the end of the year.
yes, that's correct.
Other questions for Sue?
Did you want to
Should
do
we
the
the MS
22?
Yeah, okay.
So this is just the budget put on the state form for the Department of Revenue, MS 22. It needs your signature.
We need to approve it, or is it all?
Yeah, I think you should, just so it can be on
Motion
record.
to approve the MS 22 form. Denise?
I motion to approve the MS 22.
Moved by Denise, second by Brian. Questions for Sue about this? This is just presenting our budget, right?
That's correct.
Okay. All those in favor, raise your hand. 7 in favor. So do we need to sign that right?
Yep, I'll pass it around, but then I have one more thing I just wanted to mention. I put a copy of it in your folder, getting ready to apply for the reimbursement on the 2 projects that we received through the infrastructure money, and I noticed that I need to have every single one of you sign the affidavit, and it has to be notarized. So that means I couldn't get Teresa to come to tonight's meeting. She's a notary. You will have to go to the office between now and April 1st and sign next to your name on both projects, and it's both of them are Massway. Of course, the front entrance, and then we had a camera reimbursement. So that's the form you have in there. So when you come into the office, there's 2 forms you'll need to sign.
So if you could come into the office as soon as possible,
Right.
as soon as your time allows you, and sign this particular form so Teresa can witness your signature as a notary, that's important.
Tomorrow. And then I can get them off to the state for our reimbursement.
Okay.
And all of the paperwork's with that, so if you're curious to what you're signing, it's with the pile, with the signature, and it basically is the application and then all of the bills
Related to the Massway
related to the
project.
Massway project and related to the camera project at Massway.
Okay. So do you want to circulate the
Yep, I
MS
will.
22?
Michael, did you have a question?
Kenny's name is not on the affidavits.
Oops. It will be when he comes in to sign. Kenny's name is missing, Sue.
Oh, all that, sorry about that. I will fix that.
You know how I never miss your names? I do it in order of seniority, so I have, that way I always remember.
Yeah, and I took it off of another form, and I just missed
Yep.
it. Sorry, I'll fix it.
That's why you get memos from me. It starts with senior and goes down to, all the way to Brian, because that way.
I was hoping I didn't have to go to the SAU. So thanks a lot,
Sorry,
Michael.
Yeah, there's techniques to that.
Okay. So any student senate report? Patty, I don't know which of you are going to,
Yes.
Going to share it?
Yasmin, okay?
I'm Yasmin.
So Yasmin,
Just make sure you're talking to the mic, okay?
microphone right down to your mouth. There you go.
I'm Yasmin, a junior here at the high school. And to start off, the sophomores are starting their bystander training. Spring sports are also starting. Today's the first day of spring. The spring musical rehearsals are also in progress. There's a junior fundraiser going on tomorrow. It's for an event called Besties, Babes, and Bros, which I'm in, which is just to see who the best duo is at the high school. Mouth of the River is in New York right now for a journalism conference.
Cool.
And the last thing is that Mr. Peschel and Mr. Rishardi went to a bakery in Portsmouth, which is actually owned by an Oyster River graduate, which is pretty cool.
Great.
And I wrote up, he's on my website, Sharif.
He started in a house
Yeah,
in Durham.
I actually
Big
went
time.
to his house, his mom's house, and he showed me how to make bread. It was kind of cool, yeah.
Just have to get a good bakery in Durham, I think.
Totally.
Yep. Okay, I wonder if we could maybe, just with your, I thought we might flip the E-rate with Josh, because he's here just for that, and then move to the self-evaluation. Would that make sense? Because then Josh doesn't have to sit through the self-evaluation. So you want to come on, is that all right with everybody? Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
So what you have before you, and we'll talk about the switch one first. We went out to bid in February for switches. We budgeted for it in the budget. And so just to give a little background, we're going through a federal program called E-rate, and it's specifically for schools. And the reason why there's a big difference in the prices, we're not allowed to actually specify the equipment because it's supposed to be an open process where we review anybody who wants to bid. And so we put like the equipment we wanted. And so the bid,
Visualize this thing and like throw your equipment in there kind of thing.
yeah, so we got that one bid that's 130,000, and so when we evaluated it, we couldn't find any real compatibility with the system that we had. We'd also have to do training for my staff to pretty much rip and replace what we already have, and there were some specific features that we were counting on to enhance our security that our current system has. The other piece was there was some references made to licensing where if you wanted a feature, you'd have to pay for it. And so we didn't feel that the bid was really complete in providing all the information. So we put that one off, and then the next two were for the manufacturer that we currently use. It was equipment that we knew was compatible and work with our systems. And so that's why we're recommending the middle of the road one there. But I did want to explain the big delta because there is quite a bit of a difference there.
Okay.
So hopefully I explained that.
Questions? So could I have a motion to approve the awarding of this contract to, is it Omada? Right?
Yes.
Can I have that motion?
I'll move to award the network switches contract to Amada.
Okay, moved by Michael, second by
I'll second.
Dan. Other questions for Josh? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor. That award is approved. You have a second one, right?
Yes. So the second one is to upgrade the fiber optic cable we have in this building. When all the network cabling was updated before I started working here, and the timing of the remodeling of the high school and the cabling that was reworked in the elementary and middle, those were after the remodel of the high school. So the fiber optic cable in here is actually a lot worse than what's in our elementary schools. So again, we went through E-rate, and we're looking to upgrade that. It'll give us about a 10 times increase in performance, and so just trying to plan ahead for when we go one-to-one at the high school to have that capacity in place. And so again, we had two bids. The lower bid didn't provide a lot of information. It was very generic, whereas the other bid for 23,000, sorry, had a lot of detail. We have worked with this company before. They actually did the wiring in the Mastway renovation and the addition. So we felt really comfortable working with them. And actually, after we went through this exercise, Dr. Morse was talking to the architect, and I mentioned the two companies, and The one that we're recommending, he had good things to say, and the one that we are not going with, he did not have such good things to say. So I feel like that kind of helped solidify my decision there.
So Josh, you're recommending which company?
E+.
Quick question, Josh. So
Sure.
in the original one, E+ was a bidder and Omada was a bidder. You're going with Omada. Omada did not bid for the second.
Correct. A couple of these companies, E+ and Omada are resellers, so they would actually sub it out. So with E+, they subbed it out to Connectivity Point, and for some reason, Omada chose not to include a bid for it. I double-checked with them, and they said, whoops. So I'm not sure what happened there.
So, and I don't know this technology, I'm sorry. Is there any synergy by having E+ do both of the projects as opposed to Omada 1 and?
Nope, two separate pieces, and in the end, E+ is just the middleman in both cases. In the case of the wiring, they're going to sub it out to a wiring company.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Good question, though. Thank you.
So could I have a motion? Denise?
I'll motion to award to E+ for the project as described.
Moved by Denise, second by Brian. Other questions for Josh? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor, that contract is approved to E+.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
By policy, the board is required annually to do a self-evaluation, and these can vary from extremely complex rubrics to what we've done pretty much in the past is I've given you like kind of 5 kind of questions and then just open the floor for people to talk about, you know, their views about what's happened during the past year. My own sense is that it's been certainly a less turbulent, conflicted year than in other years, and that we've had basically 2 objectives. One was a strategic plan, and one was working towards developing a plan for the middle school, both of which, in my view, seem to be kind of on track. We worked through a lot of questions about the middle school, and one of the things Doug Banks, I talked to him, he's the architect at UNH, said the key thing is you don't rush toward a design. There's a lot of preliminary work where you're talking to people, and then as you move forward, you don't have to back up so that you make a decision, then you have to go back and reconsider it. And it seems like that's pretty much what we've done, and certainly with passing the budget, we're in good position on that. So it's, you know, in my sense, those 2 things, which were our major things, worked out pretty much on schedule. But I'd be open to like other observations of how this last year has gone. So somebody like to talk? Ryan?
I like how we brought in Barrington, talk to them, since they do, you know, we do educate their students. I think it's something we should probably do on an annual basis just to maintain the relationship. But I thought it was great that we could have that open forum with them and they could ask us any questions they want. I know they can call. I'm sure they can call Jim anytime they wanted to, but for us as boards to interact, I think was good to see. It was good to hear, and I think we should continue that regularly, at least annually, I think.
And we're actually in a highly competitive situation now because with the new high school in Dover, to, you know, what they're looking for and what they're seeing in our school, to have a real good sense of that is important, yeah. Others?
It seems like each year I have less memory of what just happened to me over the last. It's getting harder and harder for me to self-evaluate. But I think, I think it was less turbulent than in past. But I think like there's one of the things that's happened over the past year. There's as is always, when things come forward, there's a great pressure to adopt and do things. And the 2 things that come off the top of my head, one is the foreign language at the middle school and the elementary, which is like the pressure is there for people to, you know, we need this, we want this, let's get this done. And the second actually is the what to do with the freshmen at the high school with one-on-one technology that's moving. And I think that, in my mind, and it came out actually of a technology meeting where Celeste Bessett is like, and I asked, are you ready? And the answer was no. And I think that as we look forward to the next year of implementing things, that should be a question that's at the front of our minds, is like, rather than just implementing something because people say we really want this or we really want to get this done, that if we're not ready, we say, you know what, we need to have a plan in place to make it effective. Because I think implementing stuff that you're not ready for is not a good plan, and I think we're going to have a lot of pressure ahead of us over the next year with that very topic. So that's my 2 cents.
Just to follow that up, I think, too, that in our budgeting, and this is maybe looking forward rather than looking back, we've always had the benefit of increasing Barrington tuition. And we're, which gives us a margin of maybe 1.5% to bring on new positions. That is going to end, and that may even get to the point where in the competition with the other schools, there may be a decline. So that we really, I think that we've been able to accommodate a lot of requests because of that. And in a way, it makes sense because Barrington increased the number of students, and so things like counseling, some of those positions makes, the ELO makes sense to. But I think we're going to be in a new budgetary environment, which is going to be stricter. Certain liberties we have, we're not going to have those anymore. So I think there's going to be maybe some tougher decisions. And particularly as we go forward with the middle school, to pile on other things on top of the middle school, and that's this huge ask. We're really going to have to be very, very careful, I think. So that's more looking forward, I think, than looking back. But I think we have had the benefit of the Barrington money, and that's been incredibly useful. Kenny?
Just more in the way of looking back, I think, and kind of mentioned the strategic plan middle school project, but I think one of our major accomplishments was the flexibility, the openness to new ways of doing things as we put through the no cell phone policy in the middle school and seg that into the one-on-one technology. And I think that really was the board at its finest, because that was a challenging issue. There was tremendous parental input on that, and a lot of upset parents heard that input and then was able to take that input and accommodate that and come out with something even better than perhaps what we were being asked to do. And that to me was a very, just a shining star that I think in this past year that we did.
And I actually think that was the middle school at its best, too. I mean, the way they came in and just took on that task with a timeline that we I thought, such little time to plan, and just the kind of flexibility and how they seized that opportunity. I think that's a real tribute to the people at the middle school. So to Jay and your staff, congratulations on that. I mean, I think Dr. Morse, I think seeing this as something we could do, instead of just saying no to something, to actually say yes to something.
Well, that largely came from the board discussions, because as the discussions went on and on, I know they took a long time to get to an end, but through those discussions, there were opportunities that opened up. And so the work that Jay was able to do and I was able to do was a direct result of the conversations that happened right here as we tried to problem solve that issue. So in order to come up with imaginative solutions to difficult issues, it does involve a dialogue right here that provides guidance to administration. So that particular issue, we really needed guidance because, we were boxed.
Denise?
I think with the high school schedule, sort of a similar thing, and I totally agree with Al in that, there's often this pressure, do this now, we don't want to wait, don't put this on. But I think slowing it down and having those discussions and looking at it from all angles and doing those, the surveys and different aspects of it, you do come out with, I think we've come out with better solutions
And that,
as
and
a
that
result.
particular one was a better solution that other high schools want to hear about, which is why
Yeah.
Suzanne has now been asked to join a panel discussion and present the new high school schedule, because a lot of high schools are interested in what we did.
Yeah.
Kenny?
And I think the last thing I would want to say is, I mean, there have been kudos given to us as a board, and maybe a non-contested election indicates that. But as a board member, I think our job is so much easier because of the strength of our leadership team, how wonderful they are, the strength of our faculty and other staff, as well as the strength of our community, who are all in to support education. And that makes the work of a school board member so much easier to do. We're not swimming upstream. We're riding the wave. And I thank all of those people involved.
I'd like to say something if you don't mind.
Sure.
I've been really impressed with Tom, with your tenacity with the gun issue, bringing it back to the New Hampshire School Board Association again and again. I think that's something that really needs to get brought back again and again, and you've been doing really well with that.
Well, thanks. Appreciate that. Maybe just one final thing, we can move on, and I just think that it's been a great privilege to be on this board. I mean, maybe it's like patting ourselves on the back, but I've always felt like that our discussions have been constructive. We've disagreed respectfully. I think that we've listened to each other. I know so many times I've come in and, sure that I had the right idea and that should be unanimously acclaimed by everybody, and somebody else has a different idea and somebody else, and then I change my mind and I think, well, maybe I wasn't quite so right to begin with. And that's, I think, a product of discussion and a product, I think, of mutual respect on the board, which I don't think is always the case on school boards. So, I mean, it's been a real privilege and a pleasure, actually, to be in this group. People come up to me and say, it's such a thankless job being on the school board. I really appreciate it. I said, well, it's not thankless. You just thanked me. So but it's been a pleasure, just I think the comradeship and the friendship, actually, that's been part of this. So I appreciate that. So unless somebody has something else to say, we can move on.
I'm just going to say one quick thing. Just tying back into something that was mentioned earlier in the meeting tonight. A lot of school districts in our state don't have the luxuries that we have. I think one of the strengths of this board is that we don't react too quickly. We're very thoughtful. We really try to find the best approaches to the things that we're presented with. But frankly, the other factor that we should acknowledge is that we live in a community that is incredibly supportive of public education. And that makes this job inherently easier. And many, many, many other school boards in the state do not share that luxury. So, yes, we have to work really hard because our community demands a lot of questions answered and careful consideration. But at the end of the day, they have been very supportive year in and year out.
Okay. Well, thank you all. So we have a bunch of motions then which I think we can cluster if people are willing to do that. So we have motions of resignation to Oyster River High School letters of recommendation, Elliot Moore and Joe Pomeroy, 2 letters of recommendation. Resignation, I'm sorry. Jordan Hicks and Serena, Jordan Hicks, then Serena Coy, accept the letter of resignation as a school health provider. So, I mean, I wonder if we could have those 3 as a cluster. Would somebody?
I'll make a motion to accept the 2 Oyster River High School letters of resignation in world language and math, and accept the middle school letter of resignation in social studies, and accept the Moherman letter of resignation as the school healthcare provider.
Moved by Al, is there second? Second by
second.
Denise.
And I had a question. Curious to why in the past it's always been a school nurse and The language for
Right,
school health provider.
so this particular nurse is definitely a nurse, but with the new rules that the state passed, we can't use the word school nurse because they haven't provided her that title. She had some courses that she needed to do for the Department of Education, not for her school nursing degree, so we had to make that distinction per state regs.
Gotcha.
Okay, ready to vote? All those in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor. Those resignations are accepted. Motion to approve the Oyster River Middle School maternity leave. Brian?
The motion to approve the OR middle school maternity leave of absence.
Moved by Brian, second by Denise. Questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor that maternity leave is approved. And then we have, I wonder if you could cluster the
Yeah,
three.
let's do a block. I'll make a motion to elect William Leslie as the Oyster River School District Clerk for the 2019-2020 school year, Lisa Harling for the District Treasurer for 2019-2020 school year, and Karen Palmer for the District Physician for the 2019-2020 school year.
Moved by Al as a block. Is there a second? Denise? Second by Denise. Discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor. Those three positions are approved. So, Dr. Morse, I don't know if you want to say something about the administrator contracts and the continuing contracts for professional staff members?
So the salaries that you see a result of the negotiations with the Oyster River Administrative Association, and part of the concession that we got from the administrators is to reduce their health insurance, to increase their health insurance contribution to be the same as our teachers. So the health insurance contribution starting in July will be 15% from the staff member and 85% from the district, and that's a change of 10 points in 1 year. So the board approved a 3% increase, flat increase for administrators, reflective of what you've done in all the other contracts that we've considered over the course of the year. You also approved that any savings in health insurance could be used to help create an equity within the positions. So when you go down through these, and if you did a percentage, we had a total of $30,257 in savings from the change in insurance that we then applied to certain positions to help bring them a little bit higher. Examples would be the athletic director, the transportation director. So we did a little bit on a tiny bit on one of the assistant principals in order to start to bring some of the other positions that either weren't in market or were decidedly off to start to bring them back, to start to bring them toward market. So most of the positions in this current year were competitive, but we still have some of the administrative positions that we need to boost their salaries so that they're competitive with the market. And that the ORAA agreed to could happen over a 3-year period. So these adjustments are just based on the first year of the contract. So it's all within what the board authorized for negotiations, and then we just distributed the funds with the cooperation of the ORAA in a way that made the most sense in the first year. So I'd be glad to answer any questions related to that. And Catherine Plord was one of the chief negotiators, so she could answer any questions as well if the board wanted to have any questions.
Denise?
I'll just make a motion to approve the administrator contracts as presented.
Okay, moved by Denise, second by Brian. Questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor, those contracts are approved.
Wait a minute, I have to tell Catherine to sit back down.
And so then we also have the continuing contract professional staff members as submitted.
And
So would that be the director's salaries and the administrative?
No, that's this one here. It's the big, long list.
Yeah, it's all your continuing contract
sorry.
teacher positions across the district.
Okay, I'm sorry. yeah. Okay.
I often get asked the question, why we do this. It's actually just a bit of affirmation by the board, because all of these people are on continuing contracts, so you question why you would have to do this annually. It's basically tradition and a routine that we've always done and other school systems throughout the state have done, so.
Okay. Denise?
I just have one question, because I can't remember, because what happens with the first through year 5 people? Oops, sorry.
Yep, so they are not on this list. They are evaluated, they have to have their evaluations done by March 15th, and if they're renewed, then they're presented to you. Are they in this list when they're approved, Todd? Yeah. Yeah, if they're approved, they're in this list. If they haven't been approved, they're not in this list.
But these are all saying past, so they're not saying the year then? Okay.
These are just the continuing contract ones. By April 1st, all probationary teachers are
Todd.
notified, and then those will come to you at the next meeting.
Okay, all right, yeah, all right, thank you.
Thanks for that clarification, my friend.
So can I have the motion to, I don't think I have a motion yet, do I?
No.
No.
So moved. I'll make a motion to approve the continuing contract professional staff members.
Moved by Al, second by
I'll
Denise.
second.
Okay, discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. 7 in favor, those are approved. We have a motion to approve the superintendent's contract for 2019-20, which is in line with the 3% that we give, pretty consistent across the board, so. Can I have a motion to approve that, Brian?
Motion to approve the 2019-2020 superintendent's contract.
Moved by Brian, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Denise. Questions on that? None? All in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor, that contract's approved. So now we're down to policies, so I don't know, Denise, if you want to talk us through some of these, or?
Yes. So I think we probably should split this up, because there's one that's both for first and second read. So hold on, let me find my, oops, that's not the right thing. Do you have it right in front of you? Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, so perhaps first, what we could do is,
What do you call them, like other?
I'll make a motion to adopt for first read the sabbatical leave, policy GCBD, and, no, the high school credit is, that's the different one. So sabbatical leave, why don't we maybe do that one first, separately, because the other one is for first and second read, so just not to be too confused. So I'll just make a motion for sabbatical leave, policy GCBD.
I'm sorry.
I'm like,
I'm just doing the sabbatical leave one
Okay,
right
okay,
now,
okay.
because that's the
So you're
only
moving-
one
you're
for
moving to
first
adopt the
read.
sabbatical leave.
Yeah, that one's for
For
first
first read,
read,
okay.
yeah.
So you're moving it,
I'll
second by Al. And I think the only change in that is because the idea that the sabbatical should be something that works for the improvement of the district, so that's one of the criteria, or really the major criteria, that's,
All right, I have it in my-
as opposed to maybe somebody just, doing a PhD and they're going to, take, they have to kind of make the case that it's going to improve. Okay. So that's the only really change to it. Am I right? Okay.
And this wouldn't necessarily preclude somebody doing graduate work as part of that, but I think
Correct.
it raises the bar for how that ties back to
Yeah.
direct
Exactly.
contribution to the
Yeah.
broader,
Yeah, if the dissertation was like a historical study of technical colleges in New Hampshire, that might be a little bit of a stretch to say how that's going to, so.
Yeah.
But there could be like studies, doctoral studies that might do that, so it wouldn't preclude that, but it would have to demonstrate that.
And this was an outgrowth after the sabbatical committee met and we brought forward the sabbaticals to you all. We sat down to critique the process because we wanted to try to make it as best as we could for the district. And through that kind of working, we came up with some language brought to the policy committee, and policy committee
Correct.
Revamped it and is bringing forward this. Is it?
Yeah, and I think we were also trying to make sure that people who are applying for sabbaticals understood where our focus was, because when we got multiple requests for advanced coursework, it was challenging to separate them out, except for looking at the benefit to what it would produce to the district. So we wanted to shift the focus to that as opposed to doing advanced coursework, which absolutely is an option. We just wanted to make sure that our measure of which ones to offer was based on benefit to the school district and our students.
So we're ready to vote on this, just minor, I mean, it's not a minor change, but that's the only change. Ready? All in favor, please raise your hand.
Okay.
7 in favor. That policy is approved for first read.
Okay.
Denise?
Then I'm going to jump over the high school, the grade 8 one, because that's different. So let's just go ahead and go with, for second read, policy JICD, student discipline and due process. A D policy to be determined, allowable use of funds and adherence to uniform grant guidance, and also a D policy to be determined, federal cash management, and those are for second read and adoption.
So you're moving those as a block?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second? Second by Al. Okay, questions about these? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving these for second read, please raise your hand. 7 in favor, these are approved for second read.
Okay. Okay, and then for policy IMBD, high school credit for 8th grade advanced coursework. The reason that is up for first and second read is that issue is really has come up, and the current policy as written really wasn't clear. We needed language that was clarifying in order to guide our high school administrators in terms of how, and actually middle school as well, because this applies to 8th grade, but basically under which conditions high school credit could be granted. So the policy is there, and I'd like to make a motion to accept it for first and second read.
Suzanne.
And she can,
I thought you-
yeah, before we, yeah, that's fine. Let's make a motion first, but,
So maybe if you could explain kind of why this has come up, okay?
yeah.
Sure. So there are a few things all occurring at the same time, which is why it's come up multiple times. One is we have students in the middle school now that are going to be taking multiple years of world language, and they will be coming through to the high school. So our incoming 9th grade next year will be coming, there's a cohort of kids that will be entering the high school at level 3, as opposed to in the past, they were coming in level 2. And as we increase that program and the accessibility of students to receive many levels prior to coming to the high school, we need to have some clarity around how many credits their students are going to be entering with that program. Another few other areas that I've had some contact with some parents around issues of students taking high school level classes in the middle school through VLAX without the high school knowing, without me knowing, and going through the approval process, and then coming and requesting high school credit and for that information to be placed on the transcript. So we have a very strict process that the students in the high school go through to earn VLAX credit. And so part of this is related to that, because we have some students in the middle school now that are taking high school VLAX classes, and they are asking for those classes to be awarded on the high school transcript.
Is it true that, I mean, going back to our discussion, that I think a key word here is elective, that these could be counted as elective credits. So for example, Essentials of English, it would be, as I understand it, If you took like an English course in VLAX in 8th grade, that
Yeah.
could count as an elective on your high school transcript, but that could not help you get out of, not take
Yeah, so that had, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That has been a topic of conversation as well. Faculty have spent a lot of time on curricular development and on the 9th grade. And the ninth grade, and this is evolving, and next year will continue to evolve, but the 9th grade program really is a transition program. It is both developmentally appropriate and intellectually challenging, and we feel that it's really quite essential for students to go through that program for the foundational pieces prior to getting into the electives, because the electives really are meant for students who have a solid foundation and skills. And so when we look at some of these requirements, such as world cultures and essentials of English, they are teaching different skills and content that is necessary for those upper level classes and electives. And so while we embrace the students and the student opportunity to take some of these classes, we encourage them to do so for intellectual curiosity but not necessarily to fulfill the high school graduation requirements.
Before they get.
Yes, prior to arriving, prior to being a high school student.
So they can't use a VLAX course could not be used to place out of.
Correct.
Essentials of English.
Yep, so someone could take a VLAX class for placement in math. Let's say they wanted to take a VLAX class of geometry, and they went through the appropriate process and took the final exam and did all of these other pieces, and they could be placed into Algebra 2 having done that. And so it could impact a student's placement as they enter the high school, but they wouldn't necessarily receive that credit.
Right. Yeah. This also aligns this policy with the graduation expectations that the board passed last year when we revised that document. So it doesn't eliminate the possibility of an 8th grader coming in with a high school algebra credit or a high school world language credit, but basically it's putting significant guidance into the policy related to elective courses for the high school as a middle school transitions into the high school. So as Suzanne said, we really feel like the 9th grade program is a foundation program for success at the high school, and we don't want courses outside of the high school to count towards graduation credit, and that's particularly the freshman year, because that is just an essential year for us.
And that's specifically in ELA, or that's broader?
Right, so any high school course in the freshman year that's required, which is essentially all of them, couldn't be replaced by an outside course other than the exceptions which we have traditionally done around algebra and world language.
If that's what we're looking for, should the policy just say that, or also say that?
Well, it also provides a vehicle for, so we'll say that there's an 8th grade student who wants to take an elective course in VLAX, or it has an opportunity at UNH or Great Bay, they would go through the ELO process at the high school to get prior approval. So that's why that section's in there, so that those students who want to do that have a vehicle to do that and have guidance on how to do it.
Right, but so in addition to what is here, if the concern is we don't want you to be able to replace a required freshman course with an outside course, let's just say that. Let's add that as another.
Add that language to the policy.
To the policy.
That would be. Go ahead.
Yeah, but this goes beyond that. I mean, this is saying that we don't want 8th graders. We wouldn't want an 8th grader to take U.S. history either, as a required. I mean, U.S. history isn't a freshman level class, but it's a required course, and we wouldn't want a student to say, well, I know this is a sophomore, junior level class, but I'm going to take it in 8th grade and get high school credit for it, so I don't have to, you know what I'm saying? So I think part of what we're trying to do is there may be some other class, they may want to take something that they just enjoy, that is purely goes on their transcript as an elective. It doesn't go on their transcript as satisfying a required course if they are taking it as eighth graders. Am I kind of explaining
Yes.
that correctly? So it goes beyond freshman classes. They couldn't take chemistry either, even though chemistry is not a freshman level class. It's they couldn't take any required course and have it count as a required, course from the high school.
Once a student is enrolled, once the enrollment flips, so that's usually in middle of July, if a student came to me and said, well, I'm a high school student now and I'd like to take this class, I mean, that's a different conversation that we would have. But again, I feel very strongly about the work that the faculty has done around the curriculum and around the freshman program. And a lot of the freshman year really is transitioning. You're moving from teams into possibly seven different classes with 7 different teachers and 7 different groups of kids in a building with 820 kids and numerous adults. And I feel very strongly, especially the first half of the school year, is really transitioning the kids to a very different model of schooling than they've been exposed to.
I don't disagree with what the outcome you're looking for at all. But I think what this says is, don't just go do it, come talk to us
Yeah.
first. The effect is that becomes a personal, not personal in the, it becomes a policy of Ms. Philippone and Mr. Peschel, essentially, not a policy of the district. And when the personnel change, or the mood changes, then that's going to change, or could change as well. And if that's really what we're worried about, if that's what we want, that required courses can't be substituted with something else, let's say that in the policy.
In addition to what's here?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a safe place, while they're in middle school. This is a middle school policy that, I mean, that adds to actually the argument that we don't want eighth graders taking required courses before they are here and can make a proposal to high school administration about what they want to do.
Right, but not ninth grade. And it's not just ninth grade courses.
Right.
That's the thing. So
Yeah.
required courses.
I think as I understand what Michael's saying, he's adding actually an element of strength to the policy in being very declarative that middle school students will not be allowed to take courses that are required at the high school period.
Well, they will not be allowed to substitute.
So, right. So if they're doing it as part of an eighth grade student coming here to take a course, that's one thing.
Right.
But they're not going to substitute it with VLAX or some other outside.
Yeah, that's very complementary to the work that's here.
So it's like you need another sentence in that first.
Did you already do it, Michael?
No, I started, but I haven't gotten there.
All right, so let's look at it and see where it would fit.
So they're called elective courses. So you could start maybe these elective courses.
May not be allowed to substitute for required courses in the high school?
Yeah.
Cannot
Okay.
be.
That just
You
clarifies
okay with
it.
that, Suzanne?
Say it again?
These elective courses may not be allowed to substitute for required courses in the high school?
May not be substituted for.
Yes, because yes, I am.
Sure.
One more time, Tom?
These elective courses may not be allowed to substitute for required courses in the high school?
Will not. Will not?
Will not be allowed to substitute for required courses?
I would say cannot be used.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Cannot be used to substitute?
Yeah.
These elective courses cannot be used to substitute for required courses in the high school? Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
You got that?
Is that okay, Matt? Does that catch it?
Yeah, I think that captures it.
And where did you put it, Tom?
I think
After the electives,
after the elective courses, period, then these elective courses, may not,
students in eighth grade may take up to 2 high school level elective courses. These elective courses,
Or grade of pass or fail.
oh, excuse me,
Or grade pass.
you're right, yes.
grade pass fail.
Yeah.
These elective courses,
I would stick it after the sentence that ends in met, because those whole first sentences are talking about the courses, and now we're putting that they don't need it. And then the last thing is a
I think you're
seg
right.
to a different thing.
Sure.
Yeah. Can somebody just say the wording again?
These elective courses cannot be cannot be used to substitute for required courses in the high school.
Okay. Is that clear for everybody?
I just say for required high school courses.
Okay.
Okay.
You okay with it, Suzanne?
Yes.
All right.
There's just
Thank you.
one other, I think, maybe friendly amendment, I think. Once completed the high school principal, because you're talking about the principal is a middle school principal and a high school principal, but we're talking about the high school principal.
Oh, yeah.
I think we should be clear about that.
Yep, I think that's.
You got that one, Laura?
And also in the last paragraph, if they successfully complete an Oyster River High School math or world language course, is that appropriate? Is that the intent there?
No, it's kind of, if they,
In discussions, we didn't include that because the classes are taught in the middle school, so they're middle school classes. They just
sometimes-
happen to be aligned with what the high school is teaching, but there are many students that are taking algebra in the middle school, and so
And they take
there
the
aren't
high school
necessarily-
final, Michael. That's how we are justifying the credit.
Okay. And are they allowed to obtain one math credit and one world language credit?
Yes.
Yes.
The world
they-
language really comes from the evolution of what's been happening with world language within middle school. So kids are entering high school more advanced. And I think the math is part of how we revamp.
And that's
Curriculum.
in alliance with past practice, Michael. That's what we've been doing.
No, I'm just nitpicking the language. I would add the word one between the and/or and world language. So we see one math credit and/or one world language credit.
yeah.
That makes sense. Yep.
Laura, you got that change?
Yeah, so you want to add one to the world language
Yeah.
and paragraph 4.
All right, so I think we have to be really careful when we make exceptions to the process that we normally follow for policy adoption. So what is the effect of waiting 2 more weeks for the second read on this policy?
That Suzanne is dealing with some pretty spirited parents and their demands, and she needs board backing to say that she's saying no to them now, but the policy doesn't support her no. And aligning the policy now allows her to say, and the board supports my no.
Okay.
So that's the reason.
So you okay with this? I don't know if we have I'm sorry, do we have a motion on this?
I know, we do not.
Okay, so I wonder if somebody could move it as amended.
Yes.
And then we can go through the amendments if people want to.
And can I do it as first and second read together? Do
I
it
would
that
do
way?
it
or
as two different
Two different, okay, so I will make a motion to approve policy IMBD, high school credit for 8th grade advanced coursework for first read as amended.
Okay, moved by Denise, is there a second? Second by Brian. Just one question, if a parent has begun to VLAX course under the assumption that they could use that to place out of, say, Essentials of English, they've already entered into that process, right?
But they did it with no guidance from any administrator, including the middle school. So they just decided on their own that that was going to happen. Suzanne and I talked about it, and what we would say is that we would recognize it as an elective credit, and not, because they're demanding it replace Essentials of English. And Susanna said, no, that's not happening. We need you we need your children in Essentials of English. So if we want to compromise, we can count it as an elective credit.
Okay, so we have this moved and seconded, right, for first read. Ready to vote on that? All in favor, raise your hand. 7 in favor.
And just before we go to the second read, I do want to, make sure the board understands that we do have extraordinary cases, rarely, but extraordinary cases. For example, we have a student who's transferring in with high school credit who is going to be a matriculated junior, and the child's only 13. So That's because the child has been taking, high school credits outside of us, and the child is clearly a very talented a student. So we do run into those circumstances periodically, and they truly are an exception. So I didn't, there's never any absolutes in the world, I guess, is what I wanted to make sure people understood, because this person is coming to the school and they're a matriculated junior.
But they're transferring in, so that's kind of a different, because they're a transfer student. They're
Yes.
not a student that's gone
They're
up
transferring
to-
from another
right.
high school.
Right, so.
But if that child had
With high
started
school
with
credits.
us, we might find ourselves in the same boat because of the innate ability of the child. I had a student in Maine who graduated from high school when they were 13. So sometimes those circumstances happen, but they're very rare. And when they happen, we all know that they're rare.
Could I have a motion to approve this as second read now?
Yep.
Denise?
I'll make a motion to approve policy IMBD for second read and adoption.
I'll move by Denise, or second by Brian. Further discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand.
Thank you.
Seven in favor, so
Thank
that's
you.
approved for first and second reads. I hope that's useful for you, Suzanne. We had something we should have voted on, that there are 2 administrator salaries that are not part of the group, the cluster that we approved earlier, and those would be like for Todd Allen and Susan Caswell. They're not part of that group.
And it's kind of like, it's hard for Sue to be part of that group because she's on our negotiating team that's negotiating the contracts.
So,
Same
so-
issue with Todd.
So you see the page with the 2 administrator salaries, Todd Allen and Susan Caswell? Okay, so we have a separate vote to approve those 2. Brian?
Make a motion to approve the salaries for Todd Allen and Susan Caswell.
Moved by Brian, is second by
I'll second.
Denise? Okay, and they're within the same guidelines, right? I mean,
Yeah, the only difference, so when I'm doing Sue's, I equate it to the special ed director's salary, and Todd's is based on a difference between what Suzanne makes as high school principal and he would make as assistant superintendent, so we try to keep
a differential.
a differential there.
Okay. Okay, so we had a motion and a second, right? Ready to vote on this? All in favor, raise your hand. 7 in favor, so those 2 are approved.
Thank you.
So that takes us down to committee updates. Denise?
The new manifest committee of Dan and I met and reviewed and approved the manifest.
Good. Good. Al?
The Technology Committee met last Thursday. The first thing they talked about, and I can't remember what the law is essentially it's protecting student data.
1612.
1612, it's like a great year. So, at any rate, every piece of software that we're going to have in the district, it has to be signed off on the company that they'll protect it. And actually, our district, Josh has been kind of a leader in that, trying to get together the other districts in the state and really coming up with kind of a clearinghouse of software that's been approved. And it's really helpful. I mean, when you mention like districts that have a lot of resources, we're one of those, but there's a lot of districts in the state that don't. This is exceptionally helpful to them because they can just go and see what other people have approved, and it saves them on legal costs. It also helps in terms of our bargaining power with, maybe not with Microsoft or Google, but other educational software as a state. If we can work as a block, it helps us. So that was the first part. The second one is, and this has been alluded to like long ago, I think, when we talked about advisory and the ability of staff to look at how people are doing or communicating. The district is looking at a learning management system software, which is kind of, I mean, the software we're used to is is Power School, but we really need a piece of software that allows the sharing of information and curriculum across the district. And sadly, Power School is not it. It'd be so great if there was just one. And so they had 2 vendors come in. One was Canvas, and I can't remember what the name
Schoology.
Schoology. So they decided they liked, Canvas wasn't the right one, Schoology was right. So they're going to visit, I believe it was Marshfield, I can't remember the name of the school. They're going, Moultonborough. There's one place that actually has it, they're using it, and they just wanted, instead of just using the vendors, pitch, they wanted to actually go see it in practice, and so that's going to happen, and if so, that will be approved. The irony is the actual software cost is the smallest component of the cost. I think it was like, what is it, about $13,000 for the software? The difficult thing is getting everybody to use that software, because you really need everybody to do it. And so that requires a significant amount of training to occur, which we put in place technology integrators everywhere. The problem that we have is at the high school. And so when you think about it, the high school is our largest building. It's 820 students, and we are asking staff as like an add-on to be technology integrators, which is going to present a real difficulty we've been focused really on the one-on-one technology, but I guess I would argue that the learning management system is probably a more important piece that we need to put into place. And so the question really is how do we deal with that, or what's an effective way to get us ready for the 2019-2020 year to do that? And so I think that's a conversation. The staff is going to try to come up with something creative. I think it's exacerbated because we have a maternity leave at the middle school with someone who's really a dynamic integrator, so it makes it a challenge. So, again, I alluded to it before about saying no, but it's like we're asking the high school to do a lot of things, and they don't technically have the staff to implement them, which is going to create a real challenge to try to get this all done. So that's my 2 cents.
Can I just ask, what is the reason why we have to shift to a learning management system?
That is
well, maybe it's something for another time.
Yeah, I think that would be more of a presentation actually for you guys.
Let's bring that before the board. Let's do it at the next meeting.
Yeah, it's a big. We haven't had it clearly articulated, but I can clearly see the need for it. Part of it is like it allows information to be effectively shared between the staff across the district. And to do that, again, it requires, Celeste put it best, how do you get the most people to effectively use that piece of software? Because if you don't have a high participation of it, it's not going to be effective.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we'll do a presentation on that soon, Tom.
Okay. The middle school committee met, and we'll meet again this Friday. I won't be there, Brian, you'll be there. Moving along, and I think it'll be really interesting when Ron Lamar comes into our next meeting. I think that'll be up front. We'll get, have him come up front, and he can show you how the kind of design that he's, presented to us last time, how that's evolved. And there's a lot of, issues about traffic patterns, the placement of the field, which is amazing. I looked at what a full soccer field, how big a full soccer field is, then that's the plan, to have that in front of the building. Just look at how many people I was just watching at UNH, just the size of that, just how much more space you're going to have. So anyways, not to get into details, but he's going to present at the next meeting, and I think we'll probably just put that right up front, don't you think?
Yeah. Ron's coming the first meeting in April. Tomorrow, he and his staff are in the district, and they're taking the concepts that you all heard about when he came, and he's presenting them to the teachers to make sure that those concepts work from an instructional perspective. So he's in the district all day tomorrow, and then In addition, we'll have a subcommittee of communication coming together to try to strike out major ways that we can get the word out on the new middle school, and we'll have that for you in the first meeting as well.
You know, I'll throw out one more thing, because I threw an email to you about,
I just trash your email.
throw my email. Like, well, you know, you can trash it, but when you go before the planning board, you're going to come again. It's going to come up again. I know there's a hyper focus on the 12-acre lot, and actually, when you did your first thing, it kind of cuts off, you know, and you can't really see where it goes to Garrison. But I think as you think about coming towards the planning board and think about coming to Durham, the real question is expanding that, and how does the middle school fit in with the redevelopment of the central business district and UNH? Because we're going to.
Is that an answer we have to have, or is that an answer the town has to have?
Well,
because we're not part of that conversation.
I think you should think about how you fit in. I think you should.
I guess the question I'm asking is I'm asking you and
Yes.
Kenny, I guess, is since we're not engaged, we're never invited to those conversations, how do we answer that without being part of that conversation beginning with?
Well, I'll answer that. Ironically enough, on Friday, I'm interviewing, the Economic Development Committee is interviewing 2 candidates for the Economic Development Director of Durham. And in the future, I would suggest if we hire one of them, you talk with him, and he will give you that answer.
Well, I guess what I'm asking more is there a committee on the town side that we can sit on regularly rather than coming in after the fact, and we can be part of the development of the answer as opposed to just getting the answer from the town?
That's a good question.
Well-
I don't think you'd have to, I have a hard time seeing how you would formally sit on one of our committees. I think you could informally talk, I mean, again, that's going to be something that you're going to want to talk with our economic development.
Definitely do that.
And think, I mean, again, I'm not saying you have to have every answer. I'm thinking like holistic, you're going to pitch this to the town of Durham. And it's like when you pitch it to the town of Durham, you should have a good idea how, I mean, it's a $46 million building. It's one of the largest developments that's going to occur in downtown Durham. How does it fit in? How does it fit in with the walkability of Durham? How does it fit in with our master plan? It's like those are things when you go to the planning board are central to, I mean.
I totally agree with you. It's just
Okay, I think you guys could work that out.
Yeah, we can work it out.
But one quick thing, it is free screen time, and so perhaps coming to a town council meeting and, kind of portraying the process, the traffic flow kind of patterns, and putting that out there, because people do watch that, and that's a way to reach people not
we are
connected
reaching
with
out
the
to
school.
the towns for May presentations.
So that, I think that's perfect, and then we're part of the discussion.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Can you clarify what the conversation with the planning board, what the outcome of that needs to be?
Well, actually, so ironically enough, the school is not under the purview of our planning board. It tends to be just a
Courtesy.
Courtesy.
Okay.
Just like UNH does. But it gives you an opportunity, they're going to ask, those are people who are going to vote on your middle school. So the ideas that you're going to sell are going to come up, and those are good questions to have in your back pocket when you go to them.
So it's a dialogue and a sounding board, essentially.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that will be watched in
Yeah.
Durham. The planning board really is closely followed, and it's like, and having an idea, and it's like, it comes up over and over again when you look at the planning board. How does this fit into Durham's master plan? How does this, so it's a good thing to have. It's a good selling point because it adds to the benefits of what the middle school actually are.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Other committee updates? Public comment? No? Closing actions, next regular meeting will be on the April 3rd. So I think we need a motion to adjourn. Brian?
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Brian, second by Michael. All in favor? 7 in favor, 8 rep in favor. We're adjourned.